So, Savan, in our previous discussion, we spoke about how math is a life skill, and now we are supposed to speak about how Cuemath is a better and faster math learning program than others. Can we discuss how?
Yeah, so there are two things that make Cuemath program the best math learning program out there when it is compared to the other math learning programs. The Cuemath method of learning makes it better than other math learning programs, which improves the understanding and retention for the students. The second is the personalized attention that we give in Cuemath classes, which make the whole learning faster. It makes it almost twice as faster when compared to other math learning programs. Now let's take a look at this. Now when you were in school, how many students did you have in your class?
We had something around 40 in my class.
40 students in your class?
Yes.
And do you think it is possible for a teacher to go to each individual and teach, understand their learning gaps and customize the program according to it?
I don't think so. It's possible at all.
So how would the teacher teach in a school program?
What I remember from my classes is the teacher used to write on the board or speak from her place in the classroom, and we would just write it down and listen to her. That's it.
And how often were your classwork or homework corrected?
Very rarely. Like homeworks, yes, but classwork, never.
Never gets corrected?
Never.
So if you notice, there is this thing in the school system where, number one, when a teacher is teaching, with no fault of hers because she has to follow the learning schedules, has to moderate her delivery of math learning to the average of the class, right? So there is this only homogeneous learning or one way of teaching to the entire group of 40 students. And by default, she would not have a lot of time to correct your notebooks and give you feedback on how you're doing. The only time probably you know when you're doing well or not is when you have exams,
yes,
right? Based on your scores that you get. And in most of the cases, the students who are at the top tier of the class, who are learning faster than everybody else in the class, are losing out on their pace because they have to readjust themselves and slow down. And the students who are at the bottom tier of the class, who are taking more time to understand the concepts, are not able to catch up with the rest of the class. So for these two, the time that they're spending on math learning is definitely wasted. Now if you take a look at the Cuemath program, now you knowing Cuemath system for a long time, can you tell me how many students are in a Cuemath class?
Maximum of 6.
Maximum of 6. We're not allowing more than 6. So what it does is, number one, the way Cuemath program is designed is students involve themselves in learning. They learn by knowing why before they jump to the what of a math concept or a math formula. So there is active learning, there is learning by reasoning. But most importantly, when you have only 6 students in the class, there is the chance for personalized attention that the teacher can provide the children, because of which, number one, the feedback becomes real time. If you make a mistake, the teacher has a chance to immediately point out you made a mistake and also help you out in figuring out what the right answer is or how to arrive at the right answer instead of directly giving you the answer. The second thing is the learning becomes twice as faster because there is personalized attention that is given to you, and the whole learning process gets customized according to your pace of learning, and slowly you get challenged to improve your pace. Now that is the difference when you look at Cuemath in any traditional math learning program, but most importantly any school-based math learning program. Now let's take a look at what do we mean by Cuemath method of learning, right? Now we call it the concrete, pictorial and abstract method, or CPA in short. Take a look at any module that we start or any concept that we teach in a Cuemath class. In most of the cases, it starts with an activity involving physical objects. Basically, we call this the concrete stage of understanding, and this is where you're involving all your senses. That is, you're involving your touch and feel, you're also involving your see and plus thinking, because you're doing some activity in lines of the concept that you're learning. And when you have understood how this particular math concept works in the physical world, you move on to the pictorial method of learning, where you are visualizing 3D objects using 2D stimulus. That is, if you notice this particular page, right, this is taken from the fractions workbook of our Cuemath program, and children here notice how fractions are expressed using just the pictures, but having done an activity using physical objects, it is easy for them to recall the 3D shapes and just using 2D stimulus. What this does is this makes it easier for them to understand this whole concept of fractions. Not just fractions, almost all Cuemath introductory modules and introductory concepts follow this method where in most of the cases concrete learning happens first, then we move on to pictorial format of learning. And only after we have made sure that the student understood how this particular concept works is when we take them to the abstract stage of working. This is basically where they are able to create thinking process, where they have these mental models of how a concept works and they create their own step-by-step process of solving these problems. And usually this should be the last stage of learning for anybody. Okay. But when you look at the school method of teaching, they usually jump to the abstract method first. That is, they start with definitions, they start with formulae, and they try to help children just memorize by giving them more and more drills. But the problem with this is when they try to memorize using more and more drills, all that they are doing is that holding this information in their short-term memory. This is why when you prepare just before the exam, hold all the information in your short-term memory, you will forget it right after the exam. You may score well, but in a subject like mathematics, where math is foundational, where the concepts that you're learning in this year are important for building on for next year concepts, this is going to be a very difficult process of learning, and this is why children lose out most of the times. So in Cuemath classes, we make sure that the abstract learning comes after concrete and pictorial methods of learning. Now once they understood the concept, then it becomes a part of their long-term memory, from where it is easy to reconstruct and very easy to apply the logic and solve problems through the understanding that they already have. So in short, the Cuemath method of teaching includes concrete, pictorial and abstract methods, where we introduce the concept using concrete method, then we strengthen the conceptual understanding using the pictorial method, and only then they move to working on abstract models. Apart from the workbooks, just to make sure that we are involved in that concrete process of learning, we have about 15 math learning aids. We have this math box which has these physical objects that are used, and these physical objects help in concrete learning, and I'm pretty sure you would have used all of them. So which one is your favorite?
My favorite would be the spike abacus.
Really?
Yes.
I usually like the based on blocks, right? I mean, you can teach multiple concepts using based on blocks. You can teach decimals, counting, and you can also teach areas. Alright, so this is how we introduce them to the conceptual understanding. And once we introduce them to the conceptual understanding, we also test it using our module assessments, which are run on the tablets, right? At the beginning of every module, we give 3 to 4 objectives, learning objectives to the students. The teacher can see it on the first page, right? And at the end of the module, we launch a module assessment, which is only 10 minutes and has about 12 questions. And it tests those learning objectives, which we have introduced at the beginning. A student gets a maximum of 3 attempts, right? But they're not on the same day. Like, for example, as a student, if you fail an attempt today because there are some learning apps, the teacher can review that and can give you some remedial activities or exercises to ensure that your knowledge is built to take this assessment. Then you can take the assessment only the next day or in the next class, not on the same day. Now, this way we ensure that the student has enough understanding of the concept before we move on to the next module. This is how we cover the conceptual math, which is taught in most of the schools, but we go beyond this as well. So we also have tab-based activities which we use to build the aptitude skills of the children. There are about 6 or 7 aptitude skills that we have identified, which are very much required, not just to solve problems and think critically to make decisions. Even if you look at the practical application of it in your academics and in your job, most of these entrance exams that you write are based on your aptitude skills. How does it work is, in every class, child spends about 10 minutes on tablet activities, solving different types of aptitude problems. The things like visualization, spatial ability, logical pattern recognition, and solving problems using their arithmetic ability, finding out symmetrical patterns and finding out the shapes, using their judgment and observation skills, etc. Now, these skills are very difficult to teach on a paper-based environment. So we use technology-based, tablet-based activities to ensure that aptitude skills are built. And these are timed. Every activity is timed for 3 minutes, and there is immediate feedback that goes out where the child knows whether the answer is right or wrong. If the answer is wrong, they immediately get an opportunity to change the way that they are applying their strategy to solve this particular problem. Now, this improves their speed and accuracy. Apart from the workbooks and math box plus the tab activities, we also use puzzle cards. So how interested are you in solving puzzles?
Those are the best things that is possible to do when you are not doing anything else.
Really? In Cuemath classes, right? In every class, the students get one math puzzle to take home. It's like a one card. They just take it home with them. And they solve it and come back for the next class. Now, there are 3 types of creative thinking or reasoning skills that are developed because of these puzzles. One is based on their spatial ability and their understanding of how spaces can be used to solve problems, or how their understanding of geometrical shapes and their behaviors and patterns help them to solve problems. Second is their logical ability. Based on the information given, they either use deductive reasoning in order to come up with a solution, or they use math concepts, multiple math concepts. They put together those math concepts and come up with solutions. And the third is their arithmetic ability that they use, right? Using these 3 math problem solving abilities, they solve these puzzles and come back and discuss with the teacher. For example, this is the one which is based on their spatial ability and the visualization skills, where it says, can you convert this into 2 squares by just moving one matchstick? Or for instance, this one, which requires using their arithmetic skills to solve this problem. And lastly, which is based on, again, the spatial ability and observation. When you look at it, Cuemath classes and Cuemath learning program goes beyond the regular school math, and it builds skills that are not possible to be built using a classroom with 40 children who are all from the same class by using only one method of teaching. And because of this, the Cuemath program is much better. Apart from the in-the-class activities, to make sure that we improve the pace at which children learn, we have created some at-home activities. It's based on the Q Student Plus, as we call it. Students can log in at home and complete math gym.
Is this like a homework for the students?
Yeah, but it's not mandatory though, as in they don't really have to do it every day, but doing it is going to improve the pace at which they are applying their arithmetic skills. So math gym is typically all sorts of arithmetic operations which are applied in solving 80 questions in a matter of 10 minutes with very short breaks in between, and the teacher can review the trend at which the child is learning or the pace at which the child is learning and give feedback to the parents and the student both. Now, not just math gym, there are also a couple more activities on Q Student Plus. One is concept revision, if at all the child is preparing for their exams, and the other is a seasonal one, which is for Olympiad preparations. There are these math competitive exams that are conducted by various organizations. So we have an Olympiad prep pack that gets released around August, September of every year, and goes on until December of that year or the Jan of the following year. Now, all these activities can be used on Q Student Plus at home, and in every Cuemath class we follow this policy. There is no blackboard, because if you're copying from the blackboard, you're simply becoming better at copying and not at math or mathematical thinking. About 40 to 45 minutes is spent on tab-based activities, and 5 to 10 minutes is spent on discussing a puzzle card that was given in the previous class and solved at home, and exactly 10 minutes is spent on solving tab-based activities. And in a Cuemath class, the learning is faster because, number one, we have only 6 students per batch, which allows personalized attention. The teacher knows how a child is progressing through their learning, and she can improve that pace by setting various targets. And secondly, we encourage the efforts along with outcomes. If today your pace of working, let's say, is X number of worksheets or Y number of problems in a span of 40 minutes, even if you're making errors, the teacher will try first to improve your accuracy, and then she will also start focusing on the speed at which you're solving those problems by constantly encouraging you to challenge yourself. And because of that, the learning becomes a lot faster. And the last is the concepts that the children are learning are integrated with the aptitude and reasoning questions using the tab-based activities and puzzle cards, which makes learning a lot better and more comprehensive. Now, we also have a specific way of teaching, and because of the whole method of what we follow, first of all, the program itself, and the second thing is the way we are teaching. We promise that in a span of 0 to 3 months, children will be able to start believing in themselves. This is the phase where the ones who have fear of math would not want to try it, but we make sure in 3 months' time they start believing in themselves. We break the inertia, make them attempt every math problem that they come across. Then in the following 3 to 6 months period, that is in a span of 6 to 9 months from the time of joining Cuemath, the children will be able to build momentum in solving problems, and hypothetically speaking, if they're at 70% score in the school right now, they'll be able to move up to 90%. We've done a lot of research on this. 75% of all Cuemath students start scoring more than 80% when they're 6 to 9 months of time spent in Cuemath. And this is something we have noticed in our database. And beyond that, children will become faster and better at solving math problems, where you can see their performance in terms of school marks, their performance in terms of competitive exams, and even applying their math skills in solving day-to-day problems. And to ensure this, we have created a code of conduct. This is where the teacher's responsibility begins. You as a teacher, one, is responsible for ensuring that your classes are run systematically. The second is you're patient with the students, not screaming at them, but identifying the pace at which they're learning and constantly challenge them to improve their pace, thus accelerating the learning, identifying what motivates a child, using those motivators to create some kind of rewards and recognition for the children for doing better in your classroom. And if they are stuck, you will only cue the answers. That is, you not directly give the answers, you guide them towards getting the right answers. Finally, you're not labeling the children, but you're encouraging them. If at all they're making a mistake, you are telling them how they can correct that mistake, and also encouraging them by appreciating for the effort that they're putting in. And if there are behavioral requirements that need to be changed, as in the current behaviors of the child are becoming a problem for learning, you are setting behavioral targets and learning. And there are a number of tools that teachers use in order to make sure all these are taken care of. Now, if you look at it, again, just to summarize, the whole process is that number one, Cuemath program is better because of the Cuemath learning method, the method which we use in classrooms to learn, that is concrete, pictorial, abstract, and also the learning tools that we use to teach. Number two, we provide personalized attention to each child in the classroom, which ensures the learning is almost doubled in the same amount of time as compared to the traditional math learning programs. Now, if let's say I mention these to a parent or to anybody who's learning about Cuemath program, do you think they'll be able to make a distinction between Cuemath and other programs?
Oh, well, I'm sure after listening to all this, the parent will have a more solid base to make his decision on, and hopefully they will be convinced to put their kids in our system.
True, very true. So these are going to help you in creating some talking points for yourself. I'm not saying say all these things exactly like this to a parent, but when you are having a conversation with a parent, use these talking points and explain how Cuemath is different from other math learning programs.